I'm going to show you how to make your own sponge filter. Sponge filters are really great when you have tiny fish or fry, so that they don't get sucked up into the filter. If you use a normal filter, they can become injured or sucked into the filter. You can buy a sponge filter in a store, but they are a lot cheaper to make, and they're very easy to make. First thing you're going to need is a sponge. Do not get a sponge that's preloaded with any sort of cleaning agent, soap, or any other chemicals. A lot of kitchen sponges have this stuff preloaded into them. So you need to make sure that you have a natural kind of sponge it's not necessarily natural, but a sponge that doesn't have any kind of chemicals in it. I got a bath loofah that's made from a natural sponge, and it has a suction cup on it already. I can use this to help attach it to the tank. And I cut a hole in the center that goes about halfway down, and I'll explain that later. But you will also need an air pump. And I just got a fairly inexpensive small air pump. You don't need anything really powerful. Aquarium airline hose, and you don't have to get an air stone, but I decided to get an air stone just to help weight it down so it doesn't move or float up. And you'll need some sort of plastic clean piping that is open all the way through. And what I did is I went to a craft store and I got these plastic dowel rods in the cake baking section. And to be honest, I really don't even know what they're truly made to do, what their purpose is. But I figured they'd work perfectly for what I need. They're lightweight, thin, and can be cut easily. So I just cut one of them down. And you'll want it to be maybe long enough to be at least an inch beneath the water. In my breeding tank, I'm going to have about 5 inches of water, so this is about a little under 4 inches. And I put some holes. They're kind of gnarly looking. They don't have to be professional holes. You just need some holes in the bottom for the airflow. Now, I'm going to clean these up and wash it and file down the little bits of plastic. But I just put the holes in. Now, I've noticed on the internet that there are a lot of videos and instructions explaining to make one of these sponge filters. You just get the airline hose and stick the hose or the hose in the air stone into the sponge. Voila, sponge filter. And that does not work, because all that does is make a glorified air stone. It just takes your air stone and makes it into a big giant air stone. A filter needs some form of suction. It needs to suck the water into the filter. In our case, the filter is the sponge, so it can pull all of the gunk and the food and the waste and little micro bits and whatever. And you love my scientific language here. It needs to pull all that junk into the filter and come out with clean water. Well, you can't do that just sticking an air stone or some air into a sponge. It's just going to blow bubbles out in the sponge. And that's where this comes in. You need to have some sort of tubing that goes into the sponge. It doesn't have to fit super, super tight, but it can't be loose either. You have to make sure it's in there enough that you can pick the sponge up without it falling out. You put the side with the holes in it down into the sponge, and then, where's my air stone? Then you put the air stone down in there. And I use air stone, and again, you don't have to. I use it because it helps weight it down into the tubing, so it won't pop out as easily as just the hose would. But what this does is it creates a vacuum for where with the air going into it. It's similar to an undergravel filter. It pulls and draws the water into the sponge through the holes down at the bottom of the tube, and the air pushes the clean water up and out. But all of this stuff together, with the exception of all the stuff together, now I'm adding it up in my head, costs about $8. I got a fairly inexpensive air pump from Walmart because it's not something I'm going to be using constantly. But it's half the price of what you would pay for an actual sponge filter. And I'm probably going to cut this down into the shape of a triangle so that I can fit it in the corner of the tank, but it can be any shape you want. But that's pretty simple. That's it. That's how you make your own sponge filter.